While Netanyahu insists that the IDF is, quote, the most moral army in the world, our next guest says that occupation has in fact corrupted the humanity of Israel's military. He's Avner Gvaryahu, and he's a former IDF soldier. He's also the director of Breaking the Silence, an organization of Israeli veterans opposed to the ongoing occupation of Palestinian territories. And he's joining me now from Tel Aviv. Avner Gvaryahu, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
At this incredibly difficult time inside Israel and around, you chose to publicize an op-ed essentially talking about the corruption of the humanity of your own soldiers, your own military. Why did you decide to do that now, and based on what experience?
You know, I'm sitting here in Tel Aviv, and we're speaking. I have a 6-month-old baby that was born into war. Rockets were there from the moment he saw this world. Friends of mine were killed on October 7th. I know families who are crying over their loved ones, and I understand in the deepest way possible the fear and even wish for revenge after the horrific actions on that day. But we've been at this war for almost 8 months, and the death toll and the bodies and the destruction is just something that I feel I cannot be silent about anymore. I believe full-heartedly that we Israelis have the right for security. I just don't believe that what we're doing in Gaza is helping our security. And I fear that this government is drunk on revenge and inability to bring back our hostages. And in that sense, the ceasefire call has to go hand in hand with bring them home. Those things do not contradict. I feel that my government sees them as a contradiction, and that's why I felt I need to say my part.
Can you give me your own experience, your own personal experiences as you were, patrolling, I guess the West Bank?
Yeah, so we've been around for 20 years, and thousands of soldiers have spoken to us. My testimony is one of those stories. I served as a paratrooper in one of the special ops units of the paratrooper brigade. Towards the end of my service, I was a sergeant of a sniper's team. And part of what I did almost every night, besides patrolling the streets or driving around or standing in checkpoints, was home invasions. And I personally barged into people's homes in the middle of the night and used their houses as observation points. And I think that for me, meeting Palestinians with this unbelievable power was really one of the moments that later on, shook me. But I think that the more important element was that as time passed, you sort of get used to this reality. And I think it really took me a while towards the end of my service to understand that I don't really see Palestinians as equal to me. And I wrote this in my piece, but I think that the military itself has been controlling Palestinians for so many years. And we've seen this deterioration from the testimonies, but also from the actions. And if you compare the actions of the Israeli military, even only in Gaza, you see this immense deterioration. And I think that I myself felt this in my service, and many of the testifiers we've met with experience this as well.
Avner, tell me about the deterioration of behavior in Gaza, because we've obviously seen Israeli IDF soldiers posting all sorts of pretty unseemly videos of them at the site of, just sort of almost like trophy destructions and things like that. And I think in the wake of the ICC arrest warrant search, one of your officials told them to stop posting. What has shocked you about behavior by IDF inside Gaza now?
So, I mean, some of the images coming out, sort of the TikTok videos, are shocking and I think humiliating to Palestinians, but I think also humiliating to us as Israelis, and I think really shameful. But I think the videos are more of a symptom than the problem itself. I think the level of destruction is unbelievable. I think from what we hear and see, testimonies that have already surfaced talking about almost an unexisting reality of almost no rules of engagement. Publications that have come out, 972, Local Call, talk about an unbelievable level of collateral damage that was approved. Now, all of that happened in the past, but what we've seen in Gaza Strip for the last 8 months is everything we've seen in the past on steroids. And we feel, or I feel, that we basically continue the next war or operation where we finished the last one, and the horrors, the atrocities of October 7th just green-lighted actions that surprised me hearing them for the first time.
Let me just interject there, because obviously, as you know very well, your nation, your Prime Minister, others call the IDF the most moral army in the world. And even now they keep saying that they have spared civilians unlike any other modern force. For instance, they compare what's happening in Gaza with the civilian casualties inflicted by the US in Iraq or in Afghanistan. What can you tell us about the claim of your politicians about the morality of your army?
So I don't know where the Moral Army Olympics takes place. I think that what we're seeing, again, compared to even the actions of the exact same army just a decade ago in 2014, also a very violent round with thousands of civilians killed. The Air Force, for example, would shoot warning strikes before toppling down buildings. In the first couple months, at least, in this war, the Air Force said they stopped doing that, right? That's just one example. How many lives were lost in that way? We know that in the past operations, the level of collateral damage was smaller than what we see now. We're talking about, in some cases, dozens, if not close to 100 civilians killed for one target. And I think that if you look at some of the practices in the 2008, 2009, and 2014 war, the army closed neighborhoods and declared them as basically fighting zones or de facto free shooting zones. And any civilian there was shot. And we have many testimonies about this. In this war, half of the Strip was almost designated as a shooting zone. And those rules of engagement have brought casualties and in numbers that we haven't seen before. And that's something we need to speak out against and not be silent.
Avner, you know, we've seen the latest of these horrendous videos, the family of hostages, particularly in this case, the female soldiers, and they're just horrendous. Do you think your soldiers, who've obviously all seen this as well, the body cam video of the Hamas terrorists, do you think, I mean, they're obviously, they want to pay these people back for what they did?
Yeah, and you know, I understand that the feeling of revenge is a human feeling. I have to say that I feel it myself. Some of our members in Breaking the Silence were killed on that day. Some people that we know closely are still in the tunnels of Gaza. But part of what countries have to do is regulate this gut instinct and work according to the law. But I have to say something else. If you look at what's been unfolding in the last 8 months, we all followed the case of the hostages being shot. If we would have upheld our own rules of engagement, we could have maybe saved the lives of our hostages. If you look at what's been happening with bombardments of hostages, those who came back talked about this, but we also know that there were hostages that were killed, right? If we're thinking about the hostages, we of course need a ceasefire, but we also need to make sure that we're not shooting in an indiscriminate way, that we're using our force in a smart manner.
Okay.
And I fear that we're in a moment where that has spiraled out of control. And I mean,
right,
I'm so frightened and tragically thinking, you know, if this will continue, how many hostages will manage to see their families? We need a ceasefire.
And like so many Israelis, you're wearing the yellow ribbon for the hostages. Avner Gvar-Yahu, thank you so much for being with us.